In this video, I'm going to show you how to do what I call a DJ master. This is just so I can play it out in the clubs. I usually bounce this down without any, without any processing on it or any mastering on the chain, and send it off for mastering for the label. But before I do that, I do my own master and try and get it as best I can, so it sounds the best. Because sometimes you don't want to send it away for professional mastering and then realise that, you don't like a part in it or something like that. You'd like to play it out on the dance floor, see how it sounds, and if you're happy with it. So this is what I do before I get to that point. What I've done is, before I hit record on this video, I just dropped all my channels down, so the input gain for the master chain wasn't too high, wasn't clipping. So I've just dropped those down quite a bit. I usually try and come in on those around -16. If you just use like Logic's metering, there's a level, there we go, and then if you just change that to true peak and RMS, and then I just tend to take this down to like sort of around -16 on the input.
Getting high, getting high, getting high, getting high, getting high, getting high.
Around there, and then I know that the levels are it's not going to be too hot throughout the track, and I've got lots of headroom to play with in the mix. And again, earlier from when I was cutting all the audio bits out, there's you're reducing a lot of noise and taking out like all these sort of areas where there's not going to be a lot of build up from the noise floor. So yeah, moving on, right? So what I do is, once I know my levels are right, I will make sure I've got all my metering tools. I use this quite a lot. This is adapter from Plugin Alliance. Well, it's from their bundle, which I use. I like a lot of their stuff. I also use the Black Box and a couple of others which I bought. I use the Flux and also Scope. I sometimes use that, but mainly that's just I use it on oscilloscope just for my kick drums, or if my percussion, or just to see where the waveform is. But a lot do that, and that it's really good. But I tend to try and keep it simple. I use Span also, just to make sure I've got no huge phasing issues. And yeah, but this plugin really helps me. I really like this one because and also tonal balance from Isotope. I use that quite a bit. If it gives you a good ballpark figure, especially if you've been working on something, say you've mixed it down in a day, and you're also just you have to master it that day for the gig that night or something. It's really good to give you a ballpark. So yeah, first thing I would do is I would make sure that there's a filter at the beginning, so I'll just remove what I'm not going to use. So I'll put this on. I use the back CQ. This is also on Plugin Alliance, but there's also a UAD version, and I believe there's just a normal standard version. And what I would do on this is just I would make sure it's on mid-side mode. So the side is the bottom and the top is the mid, and then just using, depending on the track, what I want, I would put maybe an 18 or a 24. I try not to do too much on the mono on the mid side, because some of that low end, although you want to feel it, you can't necessarily always hear it. And then what I would do is sometimes just boost the tops. I would also put a cut on the tops, which would just take out all the noises that only cats can hear. Because at my age, I think when I get down to like 28, I can't hear up there, but it's called the air, the presence, the real high top stuff. So I put that on there, and then this just takes out any of the lower sub sort of muddiness, and also the high very tops. Just kind of top and tails the whole mix before it goes into here. So right, and then on here I would have a Pro Q3. A similar sort of, that's just my standard setup. I would have this set to it just depending on what the bass and the kick and the bass are doing. So one good thing about the adapter plugin is it's got a great feature on here where you can just listen to the certain areas. So if I just hit highlight sub and I press play now, it only does those areas, so I could listen to see what frequencies are going on down here. And then this really helps me, because I used to, in the old school ways before I got this, I used to just put a filter on or an EQ, and then just drag it down like that, just to hear what was going on, and then I'd bring it up. It's a really good way of sort of listening to what areas you're working on, and because especially if you've got a lot of highs and mids going on, it's the loudness, you can think that your bass isn't loud enough just because your eardrums are getting battered with the the high end. So it's really handy to just to isolate. Just to isolate the frequencies. This thing does so much more as well. I'm sure there's a few tutorials on Sonic Academy about it, which will probably go in real depth, but it's a tool I've really got to use a lot of. So let's have a look here. So what I would do is I would have Pro Q3. I would almost use this like a multi-band at the moment. So if I just get rid of these, I can leave that one at the top, because again, it's I know it's doing the same thing, but I just like the sound of on this. So linear phase, I'll just put that high. Some people might not be able to manage that on the computer, but that just helps the audio quality, right? And then what I'm looking for now is by using so if I go to this, what I do is I look for the areas that could be problematic. So I'll go to the most peaked part, which would probably be here, because everything's going on. So around this area.
Getting high.
And if you can see that that lead is really poking through the mix, but at the same time I wouldn't want to reduce that, because that's the effect I want. But I also don't want it taking up any headroom on my on the limiting or the compression. So if you just hover over this on Pro Q3, it actually holds up the areas, and then you can put nodes in to actually change or affect the areas you want by, like, say, dragging down like that. I would bring it down if I wanted to do that. So I can see there's an area and that on the lower one which I might bring down a little. There we go, just on that area, because I feel like that lead's just going a little bit too much. But on this, what I would do is make it a dynamic. So that means it would you can put it back to how it was, like that, back up there. And then if you bring your dynamic range down to 2 or 3, one thing you always have to make sure as well is when you're mastering, doing a self master, is make sure it's on 3 or 6. Don't, because if that's on like 30, and you can see it doesn't look like much, but you imagine that's EQing everything across the whole range. So it's important that that's on, like, say 3, because you wouldn't want, you don't want too much out of this. So yeah, again, same with that one, make dynamic, because when those lasers came in, they were probably a bit too much. So even if it just tickles it a little bit, like that, and then you'll notice it'll treat that area, but also the mix will remain until it hits that. Watch.
Getting high.
So if I turn this off and then you look at this side,
Getting high.
it's around there at 29. If I turn this off, see, it's only a couple of dB dropping it down, but that just really helps with getting your mix a lot more level. And you can do it with anything. You can do it with individual elements. You can do it with across the whole mix, and that's a really useful thing. So after that, what I would do is that wouldn't go to the end. I would put on, again, I really like the, I keep talking about it, but I really like the Universal Audio, the Shadow Hills. Just gives it some nice, a nice flavour to, again, I just run it through it, so we'll A and B it. It's really subtle, but just giving it that steel sound, just running it through. It doesn't always work for most tracks, but it can work for. It works for majority of mine anyway. So after that, I would probably look at some maybe using the. Let's have a look. What would I do after that one? I would probably use a compressor. I think my go-to compressor would be in this scenario would be I really like the API 2500 because this adds a lot of character, and there's a setting in here which is like one of my favorite, the Mix Glue 2, and then I change the this tone onto medium, which it gives it some saturation. And then I bring the level up like this, so
Getting high. Getting high. Getting high.
again that just tames all the sort of transients and the mix. I do use an SSL bus compressor, an analog one, which I would use instead of that if I was doing it in the hardware world. But yeah, just for this, I would use that. And then after that, I would probably look at a. Again, there's no right or wrongs. It all depends on the track. It all depends on how you want the final sound to sound. But this is how I would do it. And after that one, let me have a look. What would I do on that one? On this, I would probably add another EQ, like the where are we with the Universal Audio? You see, every time I get a favorite, and then I'm like, oh, I'll use this one, or I'll use that one, and then weeks later I change my mind and I use something else. But yeah, this is something I've used for a while. I really like this one. Again, all these mastering things, they have like some really good filters on, a bit like the backs had earlier. You can shelve off the cut off the tops and the bottom, which are really handy. But this has a link as well, a stereo link, or so whatever. If you move this knob, it actually moves both, or if you move that, it's independent for left and right. So with this, there's a little thing I learned a while back is about putting a bell shelf on and then putting it to 27k and putting it up, and you just add in some air, some presence on the real top ends.
Getting high. Getting high.
It actually helps if I put it on boost, because otherwise it won't be doing anything. Sorry about that. So yeah, we'll try it again.
Getting high. Getting high.
And that reminds me, I often use a saturator. Just before that, I use the black box, which is the Plugin Alliance. This one, like I showed you in the earlier video. This does the same thing with the air. So you've got the air amount. So you could, you don't have to do that. It's just a little trick I learned a while back. But yeah, it does. This kind of does the same thing. And then again, the saturation, the pentodes and the triodes here really sort of give you that crunch, but also with you, it doesn't take it too much where it's it's a nice sound, because you've just got to make sure that your mix isn't full, because sometimes you turn it on and you probably destroy your mix. So I just try and dial it in and then bring it back.
Getting high. Getting high. Getting high. Getting high. Getting high.
And as you can see, the level's going up and up. So I'm just trying to sort of keep it down and until later on. So I just, every now and again, I just keep jumping back to the to here and check out that, make sure everything's cool. I'm mindful of later on when I actually look at the limiting, that I know that I'll get a lot more sort of headroom with the top end. It'll lift it up a lot more with the limiting. In this plugin, it's great because you can A and B, hence the A and B. So I've just put in another track of mine, which I'm going to try and match the levels of it, or get it at near, because I've had that one mastered. So I'll just try and get it as near as I can with that using these tools. So after the black box, I would have the Manley, but what I would do is use this EQ as just as like almost like the final EQ. If not, another one I've really liked at the moment is from Plugin Alliance, is the Mag EQ4. That's a really good one. Again, it's got an air gain, so you can really put that high shelf. But the controls are quite they're quite broad, but they're also really in the areas that really matter. Like 40 in your sub area and your high shelf lift, which is great for like just to bring the vocals and all the top ends out and things. So this is more of like at the end. So.
Getting high. Getting high. Getting high.
If you see the peaks flashing there, so you can just bring the trim down by this little screw. Get your pretend screwdriver out.
Getting high. Getting high.
Yeah, so what I would do now is I would probably use a clipper. I use the standard clip on this one, and then I just make sure that the soft clip is up to a maximum of about 5. The ceiling's on. I usually go to the soft clip pro setting to start, just to get it roughly there. Make sure these settings are around that, and then I just reduce this by about 1 or 2. So what this does is it just takes off, it clips, hence the name clipper, standard clip. It takes off, it clips the audio. So instead of a compressor pushing it down or a limiter, it actually it cuts the tops off. So, and then you get more headroom for your final limiters.
Getting high. Getting high. Getting high.
And one thing I've noticed over time is that I try and do everything really subtly. When I first started out, I just used to put these dials on full and think it sounded. But I've just realised that everything just adds a little tiny percent. So going from the early stages, all the way through, it gets to a point where it sounds, you don't necessarily always need this. I sometimes would just only put like an EQ on, a saturator and a limiter. You don't need all this. It's just I'm trying to fit a lot of it into the video, what I would sometimes use. And then I would use like either the Pro L after the standard clip here. But again, making sure on here that it's sort of everything looks all right. What I would do at this stage is try and now match it to the other track. This is another track I've recently been working on, so I would try and match it with here by switching between the two. Right, so you can tell that one's a lot louder in volume, so you can actually match the loudness on here. Which is a really handy thing, so you can listen to and also that's probably not where the breakdown is. Let's go to here. So as you can see that on here you can use, there's different loads of different settings, but you can reference between A and B, and it shows you on the analyzer what's going on. And you can see the blue one is the my track that I'm mastering, and that one's peaking way above, but that's because of the leads, and I wanted those to really stand out. But you can see with the with the loud match, the loudness matched, that all the levels are quite similar. It's just that in volume it's not the same. So, but there's all sorts of settings in here which you can do. You can do like I'll flick through them and you can see. So yeah, so it's a great handy tool, as you can see from this. But what I would do now is just flick through the tracks. And on this view, it actually tells you the dynamics. So if it's too squashed or if it's not enough, it tells you here on the side, which is a really handy tool. So you can see there's a lot more dynamics in this because I haven't put my final limiter on. So what I would do is I would use something like this, or OEM's invisible limiter, or even DMG stuff's really cool. I really like that, but that's another world. So yeah, I would just make sure that this is, I've chosen a loud EDM, aggressive and tight, just to sort of start it off, and then I'll probably just change it all anyway. I'd have it transparent with a look ahead, a small look ahead. I wouldn't link the transients, and I would have a lower release and more of attack on there, and probably a shorter release as well because it's mastering one. Oversampling on 8. I would have that, the output at 0.3. So there we go. I'm quite happy with that. That's quite similar. The gain's slightly different on that one, but that's been professionally mastered, which I'm not too disappointed in my version of this one because I think it's quite near. So what I would use now is tonal balance to get. I'd use this quite a lot. It's just to get a ballpark to make sure that everything's, because sometimes I make music and it lacks in the low mids, and this is really great to sort of see it and you think, right, actually I need to put more in those frequencies. So then you have to go back into your percussion and make sure there's maybe push something through a little bit more, or but this is quite handy. So I'll just put this one on now, and you'll see what it's doing is that's sort of a rough guide of where your mix should be.
Can you dance? Can you dance? Can you dance? Nobody's watching. Getting high.
So we can see that in the sort of lower areas between sort of 300 and 2000, it needs some more in those areas. Just this isn't, it's not gospel, but this is a great tool, because also what you can do is you can change this and you can have a folder. So I've got one called Tech House Target. I'll put all the tracks in there, and as you can see, it's that's the broadness of the areas.
Nobody's watching. Nobody's watching.
So I know that this one fits within the regions, but again, probably that could do with a little bit more, around 600. So what I would do is then go back into where are we? The Mag EQ4, where the 600, the 650 is. Maybe boost that a little bit, maybe 1 dB, or I'd go back into something before the.
Nobody's watching. Nobody's watching.
And if I put that back to bass heavy.
Nobody.
If you notice, when I change the template, it goes from that to that because the style of music. So their bass heavy one has a lot of low mids, whereas mine is bass heavy, but it's more sub heavy. So that's probably a more accurate. But yeah, once I'm happy with that.
Nobody's watching. Nobody's watching. Nobody's watching. Nobody's watching. Nobody's watching. Nobody's watching. Nobody's watching.
So I've noticed there's a little bit in the stereo in the lower ends here. So what I would be tempted to do now is just put on where's the I got rid of the other one. So what I would do is I would at the very end of the chain here, I would just put in some sort of a filter, or I'll just use the FabFilter Pro Q3 just for now, just to show you that. And I will just take, so I would take the low end in that, make it into the mid, the side, and then just bring that up. It's probably unwanted from a few of the maybe plugins. Sometimes use Isotope Imager, but I've used a lot. There's a lot of spread in the actual in the track itself. So let's have a look now at that. Play that.
Nobody's watching. Nobody's watching.
So we've got the Christmas tree. That's all cool, and then it's probably just ready to bounce now. I would export that. Just make sure that it, that everything's going to be cool in it, and I'd listen through and make sure, see if any areas were, if it was compressing too much.
Getting high. Can you dance? Nobody's watching. Can you dance?
There we go. And if you've noticed this one, I'm just checking for any phasing issues. So if this is a Dan Worrell preset setting I got from YouTube, I think he just made it a little less sort of less detailed, just so you get an overall mix. But if you see the red, that's your sides, and then the green is your mid. So if the red goes over the sides, the correlation goes right up and it goes out of phase, so you lose volume.
Getting high.
So it's a free tool as well. Voxengo Span, it's called. It's really good. You can go really deep. You can like make loads of channels. They're all different colors on the same ones. But yeah, that's about it. I hope you've learned something from this. I've picked up a lot of tips and tricks from people over the years. A lot of credit to anyone that's helped me, myself. Don't forget to check out my Kool-Aid video on Sonic Academy. And yeah, thanks for putting up with me. And also, if you like my music, don't forget to follow me on socials. It's a bit of a delicate time now with the whole COVID thing going on, but I'm sure I'll be back out touring and making more tracks. And also, I'll be doing more of these videos. So if you've got any questions, email me, hit me up on socials, and I'm quite happy to answer them. And yeah, look after yourselves, take care, thank you, and good night.